Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Jasmine's First Impressions Talk. Tonight, I have a phenomenal show with you guys. To start the show off, I'm going to talk with Kendall Abrams, a women's golf star at Howard University, to talk about women in sports and how we can get equality. And then later on, we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson's ruling and the Bucks signing. So let's get started.
Welcome to Jasmine Pollock's First Impression Sports Talk, the fastest growing sports talk show in the country. And now, here's your host, Jasmine Pollock.
Welcome back to Jasmine's First Impression Sports Talk. And before we bring Kendall in, I want to say my condolences. We have lost one of the legends of basketball, Bill Russell. On Sunday, he passed away at 88 peacefully in his sleep. Bill Russell is an 11-time champion, 5-time MVP, civil rights activist, Olympic gold medalist, players coach, and a 2-time champion as a head coach of the Boston Celtics. This was a big blow because he meant so much to the game. He revolutionized the game, especially the time he was playing in when there was the civil rights era and a lot of prejudice going on, and he was able to dominate the way he did. He will be greatly missed, and he's probably one of the winningest players of all time in any sport. So it's very sad that we're going to lose one of the great legends in Bill Russell. So rest in peace to him, and let's continue to make sure we shed light on him and what he's done in his career. So let's bring Kendall in. Kendall, welcome to Jasmine's First Impression Sports Talk. It's a pleasure of having you. How are you doing this evening?
Good. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, anytime. So let's give the audience a little background about you. Who are you? What do you want to do? And what's your role as a female athlete?
Yeah, so my name is Kendall Abrams. I've pretty much played every single sport imaginable. I started golf when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Took it up because, I wanted to compete with my brother, and it was just something to do during the pastime. Once I realized that I could get a scholarship from it, I knew, that's what I wanted to do moving on forward. So just worked super hard in high school, talked with a lot of coaches, did a lot of college visits, and then eventually made my way to South Carolina, but then later transferred during the pandemic to Howard University. So we just completed our first year as a program, which was super phenomenal. Definitely broke a lot of ground there, and we're just ready for the next season, so it'll be exciting.
Very exciting. And you are graduating this year, correct?
I am indeed. Yep.
So how exciting is that for you? Because I'm also graduating, but probably later on than you next. I'm graduating in the spring of 2023. So tell me a little bit about that. You're getting into that point, that chapter is happening. You're graduating college. That's huge.
Yeah, it's definitely been a long time coming. It's kind of weird looking back at my freshman year because I was so lost as a freshman. High school does not prepare you for college because it's one of those things where college puts you in the real world. So you have to set your own time schedule, you make your own responsibilities. And then as a student athlete, you're balancing both school and being on a team. So that was an awakening for me for sure. But all to say, definitely made a lot of fun memories. And I've grown as a person since freshman year. So looking back, it was definitely a long journey, but it was well worth it.
Amen. Amen. But let's talk about you in golf. So there's not a lot of women, especially Black women, who play golf.
Absolutely.
That is a very, very small area for us. So being that we're talking about women in sports, how can we make golf or sports like golf more desirable to women?
For one, just simplify it. I think a lot of the times, when we introduce people to golf, we're always complicating it. So really, if you were to take a person to the driving range, you could probably say a million and one things to them, but they probably only get 5 of those things just because golf is already complicated to begin with. But you don't need to be adding on extra stuff. And especially as a beginner, they're just getting aware of their body and then just getting aware of the golf clubs that they have. So I think just breaking it down. A lot of times when I teach little kids, it's more letters or shapes that I'm using. So I'm not using any technical terms, any degree terms, just something simple to keep them active and keep them engaged. And then as well, just kind of making it fun. So obviously, there's a par in golf, so it's an okay score, an average score in which you should shoot. But when I tell beginners, it's don't try to go over those type of scores. Like, just focus on hitting the ball and having fun. That's the only thing that I can ask, because I mean, it's a hard sport to pick up, and it's like, unless you have, some type of background or some type of training that's similar, the game is pretty hard.
Yeah. And even like, and I played softball in high school, and then this past year I played flag football for my school. A lot of those sports, when we look at it, I think softball's ahead a lot because of course it's been around for a long time. But when we look at like golf and flag football, like that's not desirable to women. And of course, when we do get into that sport, we do very well in that sport. Obviously, you are an example of that. So being that that's the case, it helps to have I've seen a picture of you with Steph Curry. You guys have a partnership with that. Tell us a little bit about that and how his role is very impactful with women's golf.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said before, Howard did not have a golf team, so bringing a golf team to an HBCU is a huge feat, and then also being able to fund the program for years to come is super phenomenal. But from a standpoint in which, like, I wasn't personally looking at Howard, even though, like, my parents definitely knew about Howard University and the prestige, it never came up in, like, my schools to, like, choose from, because I knew I wanted to play college golf. And with them not having a golf team, it was like, okay, I guess that's already out of the question. But as soon as they got a golf team, I looked into it and just made sure, I can play my way on the team and continue to make an impact on the team as well, because there's little girls looking up to us at this point. So it's a matter of, whether or not they want to choose a PWI or an HBCU. And I think it's important to emphasize, HBCUs have the talent. They may not have, as much funding or as support as needed, but the talent is there, and it's incredible to see how far our team has come and how far our team is actually going to go. Just because, like, there's so many kids that are now be like, oh, like, how can I play? How can I get in touch with the coach? What did you do? Can we stay in touch? And I thinking back to this, I was like, I think I was kind of doing this when I was a little kid, just like looking up to people, especially who played at UNC, played at Connecticut, just big schools in which, like, I aspired to go to. So.
Right. And what you said was so powerful when it comes to HBCUs. There's the talent is there. And I've previous shows talked about how, even in football, like HBCUs don't get as much recognition as the big schools, obviously funding, just the status of those schools. But you're starting to see slowly that's starting to become something more popular. These guys are starting to go to the HBCUs, whether that's golf, football, basketball. You're starting to see that trend, and it's very good, because we need that exposure for HBCUs, like you said. But for you, being that you're in golf and you've been around golf majority of your life, are you content with the the female exposure to the sport? Like, looking around, you're a Black woman and you see, all these different things. You've been around the world. How do you feel? Do you feel like this is it, or is there more to come, being that you are in the sport? Like, is that something that you're looking into?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot more to come. I mean, we're literally, like, just breaking. I mean, I don't even think we really broke ground. I think it's just at the peak of starting to break the ground when it comes to women's golf, because, like I said, there's just not a lot of exposure there. And it kind of, like, translates to, like, with the HBCU circuit with women's golf. A lot of people don't even know, like, where to tune in for women's golf, or what time they appear, what tournaments they even play in. So it's really important that, we start emphasizing. I'm using my social channels to just educate people and bring awareness, especially, like, just female golfers in general, but African American golfers that are coming through the circuit, and they're trying to get their card as well. So it's important to spread that news, important to spread golf clothing lines, because a lot of times, like, I remember I was growing up, I'd wear, like, tennis clothes, because there was literally, like, not a line for, like, young people. So it was like, you either wear old people's clothes or, like, wear something else that looks nothing like golf clothes. But I'm extremely excited for the future, and I'm excited to see, all the sponsorships and all the companies that are going to be backing up women's programs in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And it's all about exposure, having that exposure, and people like you're still going, and you're a very talented golfer anyway. So having that, and you being involved in especially the importance of having a Steph Curry, a big star like that, to co-sign that stuff, that's very big. But you have an internship. Let's talk about that. Tell us a little bit about your internship.
So I interned at Callaway Golf these past 2 summers, and I've kind of, like, split my roles both summers. So my first summer I was working in sales, handling Power BI, and then I thought I'd switch it up this summer, considering my major is marketing and work in the retail marketing department. So I do graphics for them. I send a lot of emails, put on events, just, handle a lot of logistics, and kind of see, all facets of the golf world. So I know pretty much all about their products, whether it's retail spaces, specs, you name it. Like, I know pretty much all facets of the company at this point, just because I've talked to so many people, I've looked at so many things, and it's great getting that other perspective because obviously I'm playing the sport 24/7, but to see what it actually takes to make the golf clubs in which we use, the golf events in which I play, and like it's a lot of work. So I credit the people that spend the time to do that because without it, I don't think we'd be playing the sport.
Right, and it's so awesome to see that you're the player and behind the scenes. Like, it's always okay. I've always been the player, and I just stay on the field or on the court or whatever, or on the course. But seeing that other side of how it happens behind the scenes and how hectic it is, it's very insane. So, and I'll, for example, like even when I played flag this past year, and flag is starting to gain traction. And just seeing like, okay, I played on the field, you're just throwing the football, catching the football, running routes. But after that, like there's so many camps, so many different things going on. And you're just like, what? It's this complex. So I'm sure for golf, it's like a whole different world behind the scenes. Like you have to put things together. But for your future, where do you see yourself 5-10 years from now? Like where does Kendall see herself?
Yeah, 5-10 years from now. I definitely want to get my golf clothing line going. So I've been, speaking with designers, speaking with different people to put me in contact, just to get this line off the ground. Because obviously, the golf world is changing, but the golf world is changing by people who aren't necessarily like golfers themselves. So I think it's a great idea to, have my clothing line because one, I'm a golfer, so I know what golfers need. And then two, like, it's a recognizable face as well as a person who is connected with so many different people. So I'm extremely excited to get that off the ground. And then I still want to play, competitive golf and try to earn my tour card. So that's what I'm working on after, this season with Howard University. I still want to, get on the Symetra Tour and then the Eastern Professional Women's Tour as well.
You're definitely going to make like, that is phenomenal. Just having that vision, that drive, it's so awesome to have. And you have all this ambition. A clothing line in sports, that's gonna be insane. I will definitely support that. I'm
appreciate it.
But before we leave, we're gonna finish wrap this up. This is a great conversation. What is your thoughts on the Brittany Griner situation? Now we know Brittany Griner is one of the best WNBA players, and she's detained in Russia. She's been detained for a while, and it looks like she's gonna be there for a while. So, what is your take about what's going on, and do you think people are doing enough to try and get her out of there and get her some help?
Personally, no, I don't think everybody's doing, all that they possibly can. And it just goes back to the double standard. So, one, she's a minority and then the other, she's a female. So being in that type of space, being exactly in the same footsteps that she's in, I just know whatever I do in life, there's always someone watching me. So I have to be, super careful about what I do and make sure, wherever I am, my presence is correct. I'm not crossing any boundaries that'll hurt me in the future. And, I stay in line because obviously there's other people that could get away with a lot more stuff and they have. But in her case, she's a high profile women's basketball player and all the attention's on her. So it's like, I feel like they could have got her out way, way before really even word getting back to the U.S. But, they're taking their time and they're doing it whenever they need, just because, like I said, she's a minority female basketball player.
Yeah, and I agree. And it's very sad to see this situation transfold. And when I see these different things, it's like I see people talking. I see people on the internet, get Brittany out. And, I'm just like, why aren't we pushing? I know there's a lot of stipulations around a lot of different things. She's in another country. There's a lot going on, especially with Russia and Ukraine. There's a lot going on with that. So I get there's a lot of, you got to be careful how you say certain things. You have to be careful on who you send and different things like that. But I want Brittany to come home. She's a high profile basketball player. She's one of the best WNBA players. She deserves some sort of recognition. She deserves to come back home. And I just think that, I get she's in another country, but there's certain things I think that are happening behind the scenes, obviously, that are causing her to stay there. I think there's a point trying to be proved. But it's really sad to see that situation. I just hope that people pay attention to these things and learn from things like this, and just, think ahead and be smarter, and just, look out for your people. Like, that's the biggest thing. But before we go, we talked before the break, or before we started the show. You were once a Baltimore fan, but not anymore. Tell us why.
I mean, I would go into depth, but that's a really long story, so we'll have to save that story for another time. But let's just say, I'm not really in the football world anymore, so leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Well, the football world, it's a big world. I mean, there's a lot of good things happening in football. I recommend you watch it. It's really fun, because I know me and my dad and Jeremiah, we're going to get into some things the next segment. But that wraps up this segment. Thank you, Kendall, so very much for giving your time and just sharing your thoughts about, women in sports, golf, and Brittany Griner situation. I hope you stick around, just watch, me and my dad and Jeremiah go back and forth. So that wraps up this segment. If you want to keep up with me and you want to see past shows, you can go to my website at jasmineonsports.com. And if you want to be a guest on my show, you can go on that website, and there is a section to contact Leon at leonthechainer@gmail.com, or if you see the website here. We're going to talk about a lot of different things, as I said before, with my dad. And we're going to hear from our sponsors, which is Rent the Runway, The Smoke Shack, and Falling from the Sky. So we'll be right back for more sports talk.
Renting is everything. It's style at your doorstep, off the runway and into your closet. It's every trend you've been dying to try, and every designer you've yet to discover. It's wearing it your way every time and making it count everywhere you go. It's never worrying about what to wear, because something new is always coming your way. That's why renting is everything. New styles, top designers, all for a flat monthly fee. Start your subscription at renttherunway.com.
Slow roasted over hickory fire and pulled by hand. This is the way pit pork has always been done. Pulled pork lovers, rejoice. The smoky old days are back at the Smoke Shack. From the creative team that brought you The Browning Project and Dead by Morning comes a new thriller that will change the way you look at white-collar crime forever. Falling from the Sky.
You're watching Jasmine Pollock's First Impressions Sports Talk. Be sure to join Jasmine every week for great conversation on the NBA, NFL, and a wide variety of sports topics. To see past episodes of First Impressions Sports Talk, go to YouTube and search First Impressions Sports Talk. You can connect with Jasmine on LinkedIn by searching Jasmine Pollock. And now, back to more First Impressions Sports Talk.
Welcome back to more First Impressions Sports Talk. And the voices you just heard were from Kelly Johnson and Dion Hunter. And if you want to get voiceover work done, you can go to theleonthomasgroup.com to get voiceover work done and continue to see some of the work that happens. And if you want to be a guest on my show, and if you want to see past episodes of my previous shows and future shows to come, you can go to my website at jasmineonsports.com. That's jasmineonsports.com. You can see it on the screen as you look. So let's bring in my dad, Jeremiah. It's time to get into it. So
my mic was out.
All right, go ahead, Jeremiah.
Well, Jasmine, she'll be right back. She has had some technical difficulties and everything else. How you doing, Mr. Pollock?
Hey, how you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm
Doing
doing
well.
good today. Doing good today. And it was great hearing what Kendall was saying, especially in her interview earlier with Jasmine. But we're gonna get right into
Absolutely.
it, Jasmine.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so back to what I was saying. This past week, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers signed veteran Kyle Rudolph, tight end, and veteran wide receiver Julio Jones. So, Dad, to start off with you, being that the Bucs make these moves after after Gronk retired, and then of course the health of Godwin, even though he's back, what does these signings mean for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Well, I think they mean a whole lot. Number one, I'll start off with the tight end situation. As we know, Tom Brady loves his tight ends, and he just picked up a really, really viable threat in Rudolph. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they utilize him because you also have Cameron Brate that's still there as well, who is a very consistent tight end also. And then they had some acquisitions from college that they brought in. So it's going to be very interesting. I think that them bringing in Julio Jones has a lot to do with Godwin, and still I think he's going to be nursing that knee injury a little bit more. I think they're going to really try to take their time with getting him back in the lineup. So I think that Julio Jones is going to really help them as far as stretching the field now. One of the key things about Julio the last couple of years, his injuries have, he had up and down seasons. And I think that if he can come in healthy and the pressure is not on him like that this year, I think that he can be a really, really big threat because he's still an athletic specimen. I mean, the guy is fast and big, and I think that he has really good hands. If he stays healthy, he's going to do a really phenomenal job for us. And I also think that with the way the Bucks operate, the way Tom Brady operates, I think he'll keep him out of a lot of danger. It's like
I
you have
agree.
a situation where quarterbacks will put these guys in the danger to bang them up, but I think they're going to put him in situations to keep him healthy. So I'm really excited to see we could have probably one of the more explosive offenses that we've had in recent years if Godwin comes back this year fully healthy. And now you have Evans on one side, you bring Julio on the other side, you put Rudolph at tight end, and then you have Godwin in the slot. That's a pretty potent combination. So I think that we're looking at a really, really good high flying offense this year.
And these two signings also, they add a lot of depth to the team, obviously. So
Yes,
you still have Brate, who's still a phenomenal tight end, and you still have Godwin, Evans, and those guys like that. And they still have young receivers, like Scotty Miller, and a bunch of those guys are still there. So
absolutely.
there's a lot of young receivers that are up and coming that are going to be in within the system. But Jeremiah, how will the Bucks incorporate Julio Jones? So you already have on the outside, you have Mike Evans, a very big target. Then you have Godwin. Then you'll have Braid and Rudolph and different people going in the rotation. How will they fit Julio Jones in this offense?
Well, you just pointed out right there. They are going to fit him in the way that he is going to need to be fitted, and that's not having him always the first option. Because we already know in his past history, when it came to his injuries and everything else, he was always that main guy to where I'm going to get you. And there's a reason he didn't go to Green Bay and to the Saints or other places, because he would have been that number one or number two guy.
Absolutely.
This right here allows him to actually have that flexibility to just be like,
Agree.
okay, I will be there when you need me, but I don't want to get myself hurt, because you understand he is 34. You can't let him put his body too much on the line for the first part and being that number one, and then you don't have him for key moments like the playoffs.
That was a good point you just brought up with him being, if he came to Green Bay, obviously he would have been the number one guy, like obviously just by his name and what his accomplishments were. But him going to the Bucks, he doesn't have to play that role because you have Godwin, you have Evans, you have a lot of guys that will probably be ahead of him. And it will be very good for him just get back into it. Now, of course, when you have a quarterback like Brady, like Dad, you said, Brady's going to put him in less dangerous situations as other quarterbacks did, and him getting banged up and different things like that. But let's shift gears to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, the ruling is he is going to be suspended for 6 games and will only miss $350,000 of his contract, which is worth $230 million. So, Dad, I want to start with you. What is your take on Deshaun Watson's ruling? And a very critical piece of the news is, after all the 24 allegations, they failed to produce evidence. So, what do you have to say about that? Him being suspended for 6 games.
Well, what you just mentioned about the evidence. So I have two different points of views on this, really. Now, for anybody that was victimized in any sexual way, of course, I don't condone that. Me being the father of 2 young ladies, I'm really disturbed by that. But there is a flip side to that, because when I hear in the court of law and whatever proceedings they had, there was no evidence found, and there was no evidence of any forcible sexual assault or anything like that. I do have a problem with someone being penalized if they've been found not guilty or not even indicted in the court of law. That's our system. Now, it's not a perfect system, but that is our system. So if the courts didn't find any wrongdoings, then I don't think he should be getting penalized if there's no wrongdoings, because now are we penalizing him because of public opinion, which is very dangerous. And I really, really, I don't. Sometimes that really gets to me, because if I'm found innocent, and that's just a way our legal system is, and hey, we got to believe in it because it's afforded us a way of life, then we got to trust our system to the point of where we're not saying, okay, he's found not found guilty, but we have to figure out a way to punish him. That sends the wrong message, because there is a few other things along the lines of this conversation. Is when I hear of some of the allegations now, obviously 20, however many, I mean 26 plus or however many massage therapists, that is kind of different. It's kind of weird. So that's questionable actions, but it's not illegal for him to
Right.
have that many different massages as long as he's paying for the service. Now, here's one thing, and this is, I'm not certain of all the different allegations, but I know there were allegations of some weird stuff happening
Yes.
from some of the ladies. But what happened? Where's your code of ethics as it relates to your particular career?
Right.
Like, where does it get to the point of personal responsibility? Like, hey, this is an uncomfortable situation. Why don't I turn around and walk out? Why
Right.
am I still proceeding with this uncomfortable situation? And then afterwards, I'm saying, well, I'm going to put it out there, because now if you tell me, oh, well, he's a big name, I got to make money. So are you telling me that you making income is more important than your safety? So that's where I kind of got to figure out, people got to, stand up for what's right. If they're going to do that, then they need to stop it right at the beginning, not worry about money, go with what's moral and what's right, and decide to get out of that situation and not stay there, and then afterwards decide to complain about it, because that's one of the issues that I have with it. I do, my heart goes out to the people that were victimized to the point of them having whatever issues that's going to disturb them in their lives. But I do give some responsibility to them, like, hey, at what point do we make a decision to move on, to get out of there, and then report it without going through with any of these massages?
Right. And on top of that, he's expected to appeal the suspension. So he has
Absolutely.
until Thursday to appeal that suspension. So Jeremiah, being that that's on the table, him and his team are looking into appealing. What does that say?
Well, it shows just his fight, that, of his own innocence as well. And knowing that, he can actually do this, like him and his whole team. Because just like what Mr. Pollock said, I agree, especially with everything. The situation that he's in, how much it affects the people that surround him, his team, and everything else. And he doesn't want to be shut out and just let everybody else make the certain decisions. This appeal is going to be a big way for him to let his voice out and actually put a different stance on it, because I can say through this whole process he has cooperated, been vocal about everything, and never in the wrong when it came to, I mean, the different things that he talked about, because he actually backed it up when it came to going to court, like I just said, cooperating and going through the process, and found out that a lot of these cases are very civil. But I would take it back to what Mr. Pollock was saying, like, in your profession, what is, too much when it comes to the situation, because it wasn't violent, and many of them say it wasn't too much sexual, but it was just maybe
an uncomfortable situation.
Yes, uncomfortable situation, or just like the way that he'll maybe undress himself, or just like around. And it's hard to say for those many things. So that's why many women can just be like, okay, I remember he did that. So when is like kind of the turn off to where it's like, you know, to find.
And I want to add one thing. I want to add one thing to the civil side of it. So a lot of times we look at when people settle because he's got some civil cases that he's settling. Now, a lot of times people look at civil settlements as guilt. Actually, that can be the furthest thing from the truth, because sometimes it costs you less to settle than actually fight it. And actually, when you talk about taking it to civil court doesn't have the same burden of proof as your mainstream courts, as the criminal court. So if someone, and I just want to caution people, when they hear of a person settling civilly, do not assume that the person is guilty, because businesses do it all the time. Somebody slips and falls in a business. Guess what? Hey, I might go ahead and settle civilly, because if I fight, it's going to cost me more money. So people have to be very careful with passing judgment off of civil judgments. And that's why that's another thing that I think is happening to him in public opinion. Oh, he's settling civilly, so he must be guilty. And I'm not saying he's guilty or not, because nobody was there. The only thing I can tell you is that the court system that the legal system that we all live by has proved him, did not indict him. Let's just put it that way. Did not indict him. And what happened to innocent until proven guilty? So if that's the case, then we have to be very careful, because if he's guilty, well, wait, if you think he's guilty, but what if he is not? What if he's not guilty?
Yeah, and that's where the NFL comes in, because it's like, how many games, because they're not going to be waiting this whole time. That's the thing, that they have to make a certain decision for things to go forward. You can't give him too big, because you don't know if he's innocent or not, and you can't give him too less, because it's ongoing. So they're playing in the middle.
And I'll say this, if I'm the Browns, I know the Browns are very excited, because, there was always that conversation where he'd be gone for a year and only 6 games. So they're still going to be able to have him. Now, we'll see how he's going to perform, because I know he's still going to be in preseason and practicing and different things like that. He's currently practicing now with the team, but it would be very good for them to, he's going to do the suspension. If he appeals, we'll see what happens in the coming days, but have him towards the end of the season. So we'll definitely see if Deshaun is that same guy as he was when he first came in. But that wraps up this segment. We're going to go to free-for-all. So this one's going to be fun. So today I saw a report that was very interesting. Jeremiah and Dad, I think we talked about this earlier today. The Dallas Cowboys, they've come out and said the Dallas Cowboys are the most valuable sports franchise in the world, not the country, the world. What is you guys' take on that? And what does that say about the Cowboys?
Well, my thing is, actually, there was a question in the comments that I wanted to answer real quick. So that was, it wasn't through the courts. It's the NFL actually putting that suspension down for Deshaun Watson. It's not the courts. It's the actual NFL.
Yeah.
And they're saying there's, if I'm not mistaken, there is an appeal coming from Deshaun Watson, and I'm interested to see how that plays out. Absolutely, because 6 games, I mean, that's quite a few games, but it's not really that many games in the grand scheme of, of the allegations. So I'm anxious to see how that plays out for him. And back to your question about the Dallas Cowboys, or what you were saying about them. Well, Dallas, Texas, everything's bigger in Texas, right? So it's a huge market, one of the best stadium, best spectacles. There's just deep pockets in Texas, so that's going to remain a big market team. And guess what? Dallas Cowboys have a huge fan base that travels very well.
In Dallas?
Yeah, so huge fan base. So we see them here. You go to a Bucks and Dallas game, it's pretty interesting to see that the amount of Dallas, which is Texas is right there near us, but. I will give them that. They're a very flamboyant team, a franchise. At one point was a dynasty many years ago. I remember that. They're still riding the wave of that dynasty. I'll tell you that. But at some point, they're going to have to turn the corner because right now, I believe there's a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott, especially because now Zeke's getting to the end of his contract and he
Yeah.
got paid some pretty big money and he has underperformed. Dak Prescott, I will say this about him. I don't know whether to put more of the blame on him or just the inconsistencies with the team. Because when he has been on, he has done pretty well at really distributing the ball when things are going well. So I don't know if it's more so him or just the inconsistencies around him. I'm interested to see. I mean, my whole thing is I like parity. I like to see competition, and I don't want. I would like to see these teams that are quote unquote the top teams start to show us. Hey, is that really who you are? I'm a Bucks fan. I'm also a Broncos fan. So with that being said, I think Russell Wilson over there is really, because of his proven track record, is going to change the dynamics of that franchise back to its winning ways. So I'm anxious to see what Dallas does. I'm not a Dallas fan by any stretch of the imagination. But I want to see how they do this year. McCarthy has another year under his belt. He will have another year, so we'll see if he's really worked his system and see how well they do this year.
I'm not anxious at all because there's really not much to expect. The Dallas Cowboys, the fact that you're the most valuable team and you're America's team and you are just have not been good for the past 20 years, this is just not good. Jerry Jones, he's always in the forefront. Everything. He has 2 talk shows. He talks about the team, and he's probably the most decorated owner. Seriously, like if you look at this guy, like for one, he owns the stadium. That's his stadium. All these other teams, their stadiums are from the city. This guy owns this stadium. This is his stadium.
The
They call
boss
it
man.
Jerry World. Right. And what is just why? Okay, this is a big accomplishment. Okay, you're the most valuable team, but you have nothing to show for. The past 20 years, you have 4 playoff wins in the past 20 years.
And that's my
That
thing.
is crazy.
And that's my thing.
Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Dallas, they are America's reality TV show. I mean,
Yeah, they are.
you really have them each
NFL,
and every time.
yes,
Like,
absolutely.
forget Hard Knocks. You got just Dallas Cowboys football because
So
this is my
Jeremiah,
thing.
what you just said, that's exactly why they're
Yes.
still America's team. They are master marketers. That's
Very master
exactly why.
marketers.
They know how to put themselves in the limelight and stay there. Because guess what? Controversy sells as well. So if we're
Yes.
talking about how bad they are when they're supposed to be good. Guess what? They're still very much so talked about when we could be talking about, like you mentioned earlier, Jasmine, off the air, when we talked about the Bengals. We should be talking about the Bengals more than Dallas. But guess what? We're not. And
Because
Joe Burrow just put on
Bengals
one
are
of the
not
best seasons.
desirable. They're not a desirable team. If
Yep.
we're looking at the NFL, the Bengals are at the bottom of that list of desirable teams. But look at what they just did this past season. They went to the championship game. But when we look at Dallas, man, like it's just I think, and even Jared Jones, obviously, he wants to keep it in the family. His son is the general manager. Then his son, he's also involved with different things. So he's going to definitely keep it in the family. They're going to know how to run this system continuously. But I don't expect much from Dallas. There's so many questions that I have. Now, they have a lot of phenomenal young talent. But it's just, you hire Mike McCarthy. You saw what Mike McCarthy did for us in Green Bay. Then it's just, and then Zeke is not the same. He's not the same back he was when he first started. He got paid, and then, yes, he has some injuries and different things like that. And then Dak, he had a big injury. So, and they gave Dak a huge contract. So what is this Dallas team going to look like? I don't know. But that leads to the next question. Who will win the NFC East? I have the Eagles, and I will explain my reasoning. But, Dad, who do you think is going to win the NFC East? Literally, the least.
With the Eagles, I think the Eagles are up and coming. I think we're going to have to watch the Eagles, but just like any other team, they go as the quarterback goes.
Fair.
So it's going to be a big deal to see if he is a playmaker. If they let him make plays, I think the Eagles will be the team to beat because I think their defense is going to come around.
Yes,
I
they
think
were
that
the number one rushing team last year too.
That's what I mean. So when you look at that, if you got a good rushing attack, that takes a lot of pressure off your defense as well because you can chew up some clock, and that means you're going to sustain drives, and that means that your defense will be able to actually have a little time to recuperate on the sideline. And as it relates to Dallas, I just want to make one more point about Dallas. Jerry Jones. I mean, you can't argue with the multi-billionaire. You can't argue with
Boss
that.
said the
So,
Giants.
somebody put in the Giants, but we'll talk about the Giants on. So,
It's a head
y'all just
scratcher.
lost
My mama
the
like
Giants.
that.
Giants just lost Rudolph, one of their top targets, so that's not gonna make it easier for them. But what I was saying about that is, so Dallas, if you look at it since Jimmy Johnson left when they were on their Super Bowl run, and then they won with was it Switzer? Dallas has not had a dominant head coach since Jimmy
Not
Johnson.
at all.
So if you
Nope.
think about it, every coach that he's had recently seemed like there are people who are looking to him, for guidance. And yes, he is the boss man. Hey, he's a multi-billionaire. Who am I to tell him how to run anything? He's obviously known how to run some businesses very, very well, more so than I can ever imagine. So that being
But he seems
said,
like he wants to win.
yeah, but that being said, look at the Patriot way. And I have to say the Patriots, Robert Kraft kind of stands behind the scenes.
Yes.
Kraft stays behind the scenes. He allows Belichick to run the football operations,
Yes.
which people will say it's Brady, people will say it's Belichick or Brady, whichever one, but that operation has really worked in New England. And I think if you look at the teams that allow the alpha coaches to coach, I think those teams have better success because if you hire these guys for multi-millions, they're the subject matter experts. Let them perform. Let those coaches do their job. And I think that's where the Dallas downfall is. I think that he has too much involvement. I think sometimes the coaches are intimidating and they don't feel that they can do the full job because they're always looking over their shoulder because, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. Let them be the coaches and manage it from behind the scenes. You already control everything. So allow them to coach. And if it's not to your liking, guess what? You have the ability and the power to change it, but you have to let them go.
So I saw a comment earlier. So two comments. But Boss thinks the Giants are going to win the NFC East. Now, Boss, I shout out to you because my mom is a Giants fan, so I can't say certain things on here. But to me, I have the Eagles. Jeremiah, who do you have?
I have the Eagles 100%, only because I see Jalen Hurts having himself a great comeback year after going to the playoffs this previous year.
And not to
I
mention,
have
you
them.
add, not to mention, they have acquired during the draft AJ Brown, one of the top young talents in this league. So he has AJ Brown and Devontae Smith on the other side. That's going to be dangerous.
Put in the right pieces around him, and I really
Yes.
like that a long way
Very good O-line.
because I'm not
Very
worrying
good
about the
O-line.
two teams.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I'm not even worried about the other two teams, which is Washington and New York. It's so much
Don't say that. I
dysfunction.
told you I can't. There's certain
So
things that
much
can't be said
dysfunction right
on this,
now.
about the Giants here. We can't talk about
I
the
think
Giants.
they need to move on to a different quarterback. I think it needs to be a new quarterback in town.
My
You
mom
need
Yeah,
a
I
like
think
that.
I'm going to give the edge slightly to Dak Prescott in Dallas. The reason why
No, I'm
is
sorry.
Jalen Hurts. I'm going to explain to you. We've seen the experience of the athletic quarterback. Could he get them far in the season? Absolutely. But it's going to come down to who's going to complete those third downs. It's going to come down to who can get the ball down the field. And I think he still has some work to do there, or at least maybe he's already there, but we haven't got a chance to really see it at a consistent level because he's still really young. But if I had to say just from consistency, I would have to go with Dak in Dallas, just from the simple fact of their ability to pass the ball. Now, that doesn't mean that the Eagles are not going to be there, but I think that I think that Jalen is going to really have to turn the corner because if he's able to increase that passing efficiency with his athletic ability, oh yeah,
They're
by
going to be
far, because
dangerous.
he can extend plays.
He
He
has
can
the
extend
body.
plays.
Right. He
Yeah.
has the body. They have a solid running game. They led the league in rushing last year. Very good O-line. Then you add a big physical receiver like AJ Brown. Plus you have Devontae Smith, one of the best receivers Alabama's ever seen. He's on the other side and the Heisman Trophy winner. So he has weapons to throw to. And then when you look at their defense, you still got Fletcher Cox there. You still got a lot of guys there that still are playing at a high level. And their defense is very, very good. So I'm going to be anxious to see. But I have the Eagles. I think, but when we look at this division, though, the division is not as competitive as others. As you can see, like, compare this to the AFC West. It's not a comparison. Like, I mean, that one's going to be
they're going to end up with the easiest schedule. It's going
both
to
of
happen.
the teams, right? Both teams have the easiest schedules.
Yep.
It's going to find
Dallas,
a way.
I mean, I don't know why every year they give Dallas the easiest schedule. I really don't understand. I just don't understand.
And how they fumbled with the easiest schedule is beyond me every single year.
Oh,
but I
know
do have them being
first two games,
decent
though.
this year, though.
They're losing those. The Dallas Cowboys. Remember what I said? They're losing those first two games. So they play the Bucks and the Bengals first two games. They're losing both those games.
Oh yeah, their first week starts in week 3. Their first week.
Yeah, and I was at that game last year. I was at that game, and it was a heck of a game.
So. Look.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be the same.
Because they kept it close. That last one, they
really
kept it
real
close. I remember that.
Really good game.
They're not beating them though. They're not going to. But that wraps up tonight's show. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Jeremiah. That was a good conversation. We'll definitely see what's going to happen with the NFL, Deshaun Watson, and NFL. I'm so excited. Football is coming back. College football is going to be a lot more to talk about, a lot more to come. That wraps up tonight's show. Thank you, Leon. Thank you, Jay. Thank you to the audience for constantly giving your support. Thank you, Kendall, for giving us your time and giving us insight on golf and women in sports. I hope to have you again. It's a very good conversation to see what you do in your future. If you guys want to be a guest on my show, if you want to see past episodes, you can go to my website at jasmineonsports.com, and you will see me here on Jasmine's First Impression Sports Talk next Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a good night.